Hey, what's going on, guys? So, this video, stop doing that. All right, so this video is going to talk about our next topic, which goes along with solving equations, except we're going to be solving proportions. Okay, so again, we have to really ask ourselves, what is a proportion? Okay, and in order to really answer what a proportion is, we have to know what is a ratio. Okay, so a ratio is a comparison between two things. All right. So if we're talking about sports, statistics is a huge comparison. So for instance, if we're talking about sports, okay, and you say that somebody has they played 20 minutes per game, that's a comparison between minutes to a game. All right. If you think about it, another big comparison when you're driving is miles per hour. Okay. Another comparison we could talk about is, let's see, it could be the money you make. So it's dollars per hour. All right. And lastly, something I'm sure a bunch of you guys are good at is I remember back when I used to learn how to type on a computer, you would talk about words per minute. Okay. So if you notice here, one of the biggest things with a ratio is a comparison between two things. Is just there's one object, so minutes. The second one is game, is per game, and really I shouldn't say two here. I should say per. Okay, which lets us know that it's a ratio. It's a comparison between minutes and games. So one of the ways, there's three ways you can write a ratio. So the first way is using the words two. So 3 to 2. That's one way you can write it. The next way is you do 3 colon 2. The last way is 3 over 2. All right. When it comes to solving proportions, we're going to be talking about, we're mainly going to write it like this, write it in fraction form. All right. So now that we know what a ratio is, we can know what a proportion is. All right. And again, since we're talking about solving equations, I'm going to give you guys a little hint that a proportion has something to do with solving equations. Okay, so if we just talked about a ratio, and we said that a ratio is a comparison between two things, you can almost bet that a proportion is some type of fancy ratio. So if we go back to here, what is a proportion? A proportion is two ratios that, not rations, ratios that are equal. For instance, we know that the ratio 3/2 is equal to 6/4. Because if we simplify 6/4, it turns into 3/2. And 3/2 is equal to 3/2, obviously. All right. So really that's all a proportion is. It's taking two quantities, or two ratios, and setting them equal to each other. So let's look here. Let's have x over 2 is equal to, I don't know, 8 over 4. All right? So we look here. We have x over 2 equals 8 over 4. The one thing we want to do is we want to get x all by itself. So in order to get x all by itself, we must get rid of this 2. So the x and the 2 are being divided. The way to get rid of division is multiply. We multiply both sides by 2. So if you remember how to multiply fractions, this side is just going to be an x since the 2's are canceled. When you multiply fractions, you multiply top by top, bottom by bottom. 8 times 2 is 16. 4 times 1 is 4. 16 divided by 4 is 4. And our answer is 4. X equals 16 over 4, or x equals 4. Again, that's the basics to solving a proportion. What a lot of people do is, I'll give us another one, 3 over x equals 12 over 3 over x equals 12 over 6. Actually, no, I don't like that, 12 over 6. Let's say 12 over 4. Okay. One of the ways people learn proportions is cross multiply and divide. So they're going to cross multiply. Okay. So you multiply 3 times 4 is 12. 12 times x is 12x. So you have 12 equals 12x. Divide both sides by 12. And x is equal to 1. All right. So that's one way you can solve them. Cross multiply, divide, and that's all you have to do. Personally, you don't have. I like to teach it exactly the way we learn equations. Okay. Whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other. And also, if you want to get the variable alone, just start using inverses. So if you look here, another way we could have done this problem, and you get the same result, would it be, so is it 3 over x? 3 over x equals 12 over 4. All right. So since our x is on our denominator, what we can do is we want to bring the x to the numerator. So mathematically, we can just flip every single fraction. So 3 over x becomes x over 3. Just take the reciprocal. 12 over 4 becomes 4 over 12. All right. Now again, we have x over 3 is equal to 4 over 12. Since the x and the 3 are being the 3 is being divided by x, the inverse of division is multiplication. So both sides multiply by 3. So you get x equals 4 times 3 is 12. 12 over 12 is equal to 1. And x is equal to 1. Okay? Again, same answer we found here, doing cross multiplication, cross multiply and divide, is the exact same thing we did here. Okay? So we have x over 3, multiply both sides by 3. 4 times 3 is 12. 12 over 12 is equal to 1. X equals 1. The reason why I don't like the cross multiply and divide thing, a lot of times kids get tricked when we have a problem that looks like this. Okay, so we have x minus 2 over 4 equals 75 over 100. All right, so again, let's solve this just like we would a regular equation because that's all a proportion is. It's basically an equation with fractions or ratios on both sides. All right, and the reason why kids don't like them is because kids don't like fractions. But if you're okay with numbers, you're okay with fractions because a fraction is just part of a number, part of a whole number. So again, the left side we can't simplify since we're going back to our steps. Can't simplify the left side, but we can simplify the right side. Okay, so x over 2, or x minus 2 over 4 is equal to 75 over 100, simplifies to 3/4. All right, so now we have x minus 2 over 4 equals 3 over 4. We need to get this x term by itself. So to get rid of the denominator, we multiply both sides by 4. This one's nice because it's 4 over 4 cancels, and the 4 over 4 here cancels. So we're left with x minus 2 equals 3. And to solve this, we want to get rid of this minus 2, so we just, ooh, that's pretty light. So we just add 2 to both sides. And x equals 5. Again, that's all solving proportions is. Okay? Yeah, it's just solving a proportion like that. One of the other things that kids get, well, another way that kids do this problem, and it goes back to the cross multiply and divide, yet we'll do this, we'll get the same exact thing. So let's do x minus 2 over 4 is equal to 75 over 100. All right. So now let's try the cross multiply divide method. And the big trick here is that when you cross multiply the one set, I'll explain what happens. You have x minus 2 times 100. What a lot of kids do here is they do 100 times x minus 2. However, when you simplify this, you just get 100x minus 2. This is incorrect because when you cross multiply, you must multiply 100 times the whole quantity of x minus 2, not just x. So the way it should be written, and this is the way a lot of kids don't write it, and this is why it gets confusing, is x minus 2 equals 75 times 4. Okay? So in order to do this equation, or this correctly, using the cross multiply divide reasoning, you must do it exactly like this. 100 times the quantity x minus 2 equals 75 times 4. which comes out to 100x minus 200 is equal to, what's it going to come out to? 75 times 4, I can't do this in my head, I don't know why. 75 times 4 is 300. All right, 300. Now to solve for x, we just have to add 200, since we want to get the 100x by itself. And you get 100x equals 500. Divide both sides by 100. And you get x equals 5. If you scroll back up, or if you look back up, the same thing we got here. I think this way of solving the proportion is easier than solving it this way. Okay? The reason why people like using this way is because kids like little tricks or little like riddles, or not riddles, like rhymes that help them out, like cross, multiply, divide. I know some kids last year called this chopsticks. But in reality, you're doing the same thing whether you solve it cross, multiply, divide, or you're just going to use straight up algebra. I like the straight up algebra approach. It's usually simpler, usually quicker, more to the point. But if you prefer the cross, multiply, divide, make sure when you actually cross, multiply, and divide, you do the right steps. For instance, in this one, a lot of kids don't multiply x times the whole quantity. They just multiply by x, and the little example I explained before, which is how to be wrong. But either way is correct. That's how you solve proportions. I'm going to make a video on solving word problem proportions, which are pretty interesting. They're fun. But if you have any questions, again, just let me know, and we'll figure it out. All right. Hopefully you guys had fun. Talk to you later.